So before we discuss the topic, how many of you understand what is shelf life? Shelf life of any electrical item we buy. Any idea to anyone? What is shelf life?
What shelf life for what?
Shelf life of any electrical item, like we purchase wires, breakers, switches. Do you have any idea what is shelf life?
No, sorry, I don't have idea.
So, for every food item, there is an expiry date, right?
أيوة.
So, same way, whatever we buy for electrical wiring or electrical safety, they also have an expiry date. Like if you are constructing a building, and the shelf life of that building you designed for 100 years, and now you are buying these wires actually for electrical wiring, that should also be in the same way qualitative, at least stay for maybe 100 plus years actually, because you designed a building for 100 years, but your electric wires will be demolished in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. Then after 15 years the building would be in trouble actually, anytime short circuit, anytime, because the wires quality what you produce and install, that is all like maximum for 10 years or 15 years, while your building is designed for 100 years. So what I mean is, for electrical safety, the first thing is the design safety. Before we buy anything related to electrical, we truly have to understand what is the shelf life of that particular equipment or the item related to electricity. So I hope it will help you. Whenever you buy any item related to electricity, just make sure you ask your supplier or the manufacturer what is the shelf life or expiry date of that item, and accordingly you use it, and then you depreciate every year, and make sure, if it is designed for 5 years, you are not going to use after 5 years for sure. It could be any electrical equipment, could be any switches, breaker. Make sure you are fully familiar about the expiry date of those items, and that is why there is a value of BOQ, bill of quantity, in construction industry or whatever we are designing in. And this BOQ basically give us a strength based on which international standards what item is produced or manufactured, and we are buying it as an end user, for our buildings or other companies, in other words. So basically, there are general requirements. How you're gonna examine your safety inspectors must be well trained. Every day they'll be capable to visit each area and find out if there is any electrical hazard. Like any broken switches, naked wires, any joints, maybe loose wiring, loose joints, maybe any spark they're gonna note down somewhere. So there must be a regular inspections of electrical systems. That is why examination, installation and use of equipment, electrical equipment shall be free from recognized hazards. So it's a proactive approach. Now look at the example, like you have splices. Make sure the conductor shall be spliced or joined with splicing devices suitable for the use, or by brazing, welding, or soldering with a fusible, the metal or alloy. So these are some of the examples also. Then arcing parts of the electrical equipment which in ordinary operations produce arcs, sparks, flames, or molten metals shall be enclosed and separated and isolated from all combustible materials. So nearby, we already discussed a lot about this fire triangle, heat, fuel, and oxygen. So basically, electricity, the live energized equipment or electricity is the heat actually, and oxygen is already there. Only one element is required, that is fuel. If this combustible material is stored nearby energized electrical equipment, or like any hot work is going on and you are using electrical equipments, still there is a chance of fire incident, God forbid. So that is why the combustible material should be away from the energized electrical appliances or equipment. Now, for general requirements, marking is critically important. That is why, in Saudi Aramco especially, only the UL and FM approved equipments are acceptable. Now, what is UL, what is FM, what is CE? It's all like trademarks or safety prevention trademarks, because it will give kind of a brand value also to your, like if you are the manufacturer and you are producing or manufacturing some electrical items, then underwriter laboratories, UL, and listed items would be acceptable to Saudi Aramco and all other mega brands even. Because UL, you can't put until your quality, the quality assurance of your items are validated through laboratory testing, through live inspections, audits, and several things, and through documentation. And after that, they allow you to use this UL, underwriter laboratories, this trademark on your equipment, and that would, then you can sell it, especially to the brands. Same way, FM is a factory mutual. So under trademark, of course, you have to highlight your manufacturing name. So this FM is factory mutual. So all the high-tech team leaders country-wise, they are kind of enlisted committee members, and your, as a manufacturer, your quality is validated, and they are allowing you to put FM, because you are using right set of materials, your processes are well optimized, everything you are doing as per the international standards. So they have no harm to give you authority to use FM or UL, or even with the CE, like for CE mark, for European regulations, especially in Europe, they will not let your products to be sold until you have CE mark, and you can't get CE mark until you prove technically that your quality of your products are excellent all the way, and no quality standards are violated, no safety standards are violated, all manufacturing best practices you follow. Now, still some general requirements like identification of disconnecting, legible mark to indicate its purpose. So traceability becomes really important, the identification, even at our panel boards, even near to the panel boards, make sure you have rubber mat, plenty of precautions we follow just to make sure, to reduce or minimize the chances of any accident related to electricity. Training. That is the single most area where we have to focus, especially on lockout tagout, because if somebody is going to work on an electric panel or going to work on a live machinery, so of course the relevant breaker or the panel need to be isolated, electricity need to be locked out and tag out, and make sure no one is going to open it or turn on, because your lock, you must have the key, and don't trust on anyone, because your safety, your life, your responsibility. So before working on any maintenance or electrical project, make sure all energies are isolated, all energies are locked. It could be mechanical, it could be electrical, it could be hydraulic, pneumatic, spring loaded, any hazardous material, any toxic gases. In other words, make sure you isolate them, you disconnect them, you put them lock out and tag out before you start your maintenance or repairing project, because nothing should be come on your way while you are working. And for that reason, training is very much important, and the content must be well clear, like safety related work practices, skills and techniques to distinguish exposed live parts, skills and techniques to determine nominal voltage of live parts, clearance distance from the voltage. Now, this underground live cable, sometime the customer can say we don't have any drawings, no layout. That is why you use cable detectors or metal detectors to make sure, because your safety, your responsibility. So you can't give any excuses actually that you don't have drawings, customer didn't guide you properly. That is why you don't know what to do, because now we are in an era of technology. Everything is possible. All tools and equipment are available. We can quite easily filter out, what is inside the land, what is in the air, and how things can go terribly against us if we don't give proper care. Now look at the picture. The selection as the use of work practices working on a near exposed energized parts, like only qualified persons, not the trained or certified only. The qualified means the fully effectively trained, certified, in other words, experienced, knowledgeable, and the qualified person in that way that he passed several exams, interviews, and he's the right person for that particular job. So we need to hire the highly competent, qualified persons, especially as an electrical engineers and so on. Overhead lines shall be de-energized and grounded as well. Consequence could be terrible if we don't follow the safety, because working on near exposed energized parts, conducting material may not make contact with energized parts. No jewelry. There must be a no jewelry policy, especially for the electrical team, the maintenance team, and we're going to tell them jewelry is not acceptable at all, especially when they are working on a different projects. So no housekeeping unless safeguards are provided. Use of equipment, test instrument, like only qualified may perform testing. You can have a visual inspection also, and test instrument. Now, all these things, you as a safety professional just need to make sure that the guys are following these rules, while working with electrical systems. And if you are the electrical engineer, then you better understand what I'm talking about. Like only qualified may perform testing, visual inspection of the test equipment prior to use, and test instrument shall only be used within their rating. Now, this shall word, the word shall, wherever you see, either it's a legal standards or international standards or your internal SOPs or the procedures, wherever you see the word shall, that means this rule must never be violated. It's more important, you have to follow for sure. Every word is important, but when you use shall, you are giving more stress that this kind of have this particular rule have a zero tolerance policy, like test instruments shall only be used within the testing rating, which are designed by the manufacturer or designed as per the technical committees of international standards. So that's need to be followed. And sometimes we benchmark NFPA regulations as well. No, safeguard for personal protection, use of protective equipment, the right appropriate PPs. And this is the employer's legal responsibility to provide suitable appropriate PPs to the electricians, electrical engineers, whoever is involved for these electrical projects. So PPs shall be provided based on the potential of hazard and body part to be protected. Now, safeguards for personal protection, there must be some alerting techniques to protect employees from hazards like safety signs and tags, barricades, or attendants, like we call them standby men also. But if the project belongs to the confined spaces, then more care required. Work permit system must also be followed. Even several companies, they started up, the separate permit for electrical work, separate permit for working at height, separate permit for excavation, separate permit for hot works or cold works or something like that. Even separate permit for isolation, lockout, tagger. So several permits formats they are using. But in Aramco, mostly they are encouraging to the contractors to follow at least 4 permits forms. That is hot work permit, cold work permit, CSC confined space entry permit, as well as EULB. We call it equipment opening line break permit. We call it a release permit also in the old language, but now they call it EULB permit, equipment opening line break. So these 4 permits are important to jump into Aramco projects, otherwise they'll not allow. And getting this permit to be signed from Saudi Aramco required a lot of documentation also. And you need a certified WPR, work permit receiver. So that was all about electrical safety and all some of the information. But bear in mind, it's all game of identifying hazards and putting some controls on board and making sure nobody is going to be harmed. And that is the where you need to use proactive approach. And inspections, even before inspection, I would say the risk assessment of your electrical systems are really important. Risk assessment, like we have fire risk assessment, same way the risk assessment of your electrical systems or electrical equipments or appliances, that should also be done separately by using the high-tech engineers or maybe sometimes the third-party companies, to validate and give and issue you a certificate of compliance, or just to highlight that your electrical systems are active and fully in line with the legal standards or international standards. So it's kind of a proactive approach rather than just following up. If some issues are there and regularly you are ongoing, every time there are damage wires, every time some broken switches are there. So proactively you need to be familiar. This switch was purchased in 2011 and it was designed for 5 years. So after 5 years, we must change it rather than using it for the last 10 years or 12 years. So I hope it will help, inshallah. And maybe after this training, anytime, convenient time, make sure you watch some YouTube videos related to electrical accidents or incidents. It will give you scenario based understanding what can go wrong even in seconds, and how human lives are in danger, because it's hard to get second chance actually once electrical hazards are there, and several incidents are still happening. Let me accept that several incidents are still happening, sometime because of carelessness, sometime no proper pp, sometime the isolation lockout tagout system is not followed, sometime the team is not qualified, competent, several reasons. That is why still incidents are happening. So in that context, I would recommend it's a continual learning. Like within one day, for me might be it's not easy to make you electrical engineer, but if you want to be the electrical safety engineer, then make it your daily learning hobby, and day by day see the result, inshallah. Okay guys.